Warning, you're about to hear a discussion that may make you a little bit uncomfortable. We say good here on the Warriors because it is today's reality. It may be raw. You may be hearing some things for the first time, but you know what? This is the landscape in America facing us today regarding sexual exploitation, abuse, and we, Dr. Bethany and I, want you to know what's really going on. So we're going to be touching upon, you may hear about Sean Combs. I almost said the dirty Diddy word, but I'm going to call him Sean Combs for now on, everybody, as they're resting their case. Also, we'll touch upon Harvey Weinstein. I have questions about Kevin Spacey. We'll see where we go with all of this, but just be forewarned. Victims, survivors, that is always what we stress and want to talk about on the Warriors. Assault, rape, so many forms of sex trafficking, labor trafficking. Sex trafficking, Dr. Bethany, could be considered labor trafficking in my book. It's all this big wheel with a lot of spokes, and it seems like it's being normalized and habituated in society. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but also advocacy and support always for victims and survivors. We really want you to understand the information, and the best guest is Dr. Bethany Marshall, joining us, returning to the Warriors, highly credentialed, I'm going to say, psychoanalyst, marriage, family therapist, based out in Beverly Hills, and an author. Deal breakers, we like that. Respected media psychologist. She's on every show you can imagine. We're so honored and proud to present to you Dr. Bethany Marshall. And I'm going to give a shout out to Nancy Grace because, frankly, Dr. Bethany, that's where we met. And when I saw you, you kept popping up every time I was on. And I'm like, I like this Dr. Bethany. I like her voice. I like her message. People can understand. And you know what, Dr. Bethany? We want the public to understand what you and me know. The public doesn't, or they don't have an understanding. That's our job, to make the public understand. So the website, everybody, and all the information, there is so much information about Dr. Bethany Marshall will be in the body of the video. You can take your time and read all about her extensive career. Is drbethanymarshall.com. She's on Facebook. She's on X. She's all over the place. Let's just get right to Dr. Bethany Marshall. So welcome back to the Warriors.
Lynn, it's so great to be here. I always love seeing you. I'm glad I met you on Nancy Grace. I feel like I've gotten to know you over time. Like you said about me, your voice, your message. I've learned a lot from you too, which is so nice to have somebody present knowledge. Like you were mentioning earlier today, concierge trafficking, just before we started the show. I had never heard that before. So I hear new things pop out of your mouth all the time. What you told me the other day, pig butchering? No.
Pig butchering, you're correct.
Yes.
Financial scamming. Yeah.
Financial scamming. Yes. So it's really fun to talk to you.
You know, it's fun and I love it. I could talk to you for 24 hours straight. I really could. But it's also, it's like disheartening, isn't it? That all these things go on in society and seem to be escalating and nobody can keep up with it, Dr. Bethany. I mean, we're just hit at the Warriors every single day with new things. Where should we start? I want to start. Let's start with, we were both on with Nancy Grace today, Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Yes. And we've got to start with, if you don't mind, the Sean Combs case. I'm not calling him Dirty Diddy because I'm really not finding it anymore. I don't want to give him any cute nickname because I think it's disgusting. I think it's a real, mark on society that people aren't really understanding what sex trafficking is or the mind of somebody exploited like this. So just weigh in with what you think as closing arguments are happening. We're almost at the end of this case. Fill us in. What do you think as you've spent now 7 weeks extensively on this case?
You know, one of the things I'm struck the most by is Agnifilo singing Copacabana. They call her Lola Copacabana this morning while he's adjusting the microphone, and the lighthearted attitude about sex trafficking, almost sexualizing her like the 13-year-old girl that Lolita is the name for. And so that has struck me. It's also struck me that part of the defense they're going to mount is that these girls also wanted to have sex with the sex workers. So they're skating straight back past all that evidence where Cassie and Jane and Mia, said, "Who am I to you?" And I don't want to have sex with escorts, and this doesn't feel good, and sex is just cold. I mean, there's message after message where these girls resisted. And then he would send his security guards over to beat them up, break into their homes. He would take away gifts, throw a Molotov cocktail in one of their boyfriend's cars. So if you see them as a class or group, you can really have insight into sex trafficking. The three phases you were talking about today, like the pimp Romeo, um, is that what's called Romeo pimp, right?
Yes. We can say
Yeah,
pimp
that,
Romeo, no, yeah, Romeo pimp, pimp Romeo. It's like all
yeah,
interchangeable. It's all a nightmare.
it's
Explain
all a
explain
nightmare.
again what that is, because this is actually, with the work we do at the Warriors, the most common thing I see, right?
Okay.
It's not the white van. We use that as an analogy, although that
Hmm.
happens, picking up, girls or
Yes,
young women and stuff. It's traditionally somebody they know close to them gets them involved in this sex, which I'm
absolutely.
going to start saying also is labor trafficking. Think about it, especially with this Sean Combs case. And
And it does happen with the
it's the
people you
same
know.
story. Bethany, I'm hearing it so like the same story all the time. I wanted to be his girlfriend, or he loved me, or he
Yeah.
promised me, or they want to get out of their bad lives. I mean, people have to
Hmm.
put themselves, if you have any kind of compassion or morality. I don't even like to go there and say like morality, right? But like this is the way
Hmm.
I'm thinking now, Dr. Bethany. You have to try to put yourself in their shoes. And I
Yeah.
know
So what
people
they've
don't want to
been,
do that, you know?
well, it's hard, but if you think of the pimp Romeo syndrome as being similar to any abusive or exploitive relationship, then you can have empathy, because it's basically there's three steps or stages. The first is just convincing the woman that she's his girlfriend or he loves her. The second is grooming them, getting their trust, and then the third is entrapping them, the force, fraud, and coercion. So when you look at the beginning stages, it's like the "oh honey baby," like you were talking about this morning. It's giving them expensive gifts, or if it's some 12-year-old on the streets, it could be like giving them a teddy bear. It doesn't matter, but something that they will value. The love bombing. And then after that, after they've gained the victim's trust,
Yeah.
you begin to send them out on little test missions, I think. And that's the grooming part. And we saw this with Cassie, where P. Diddy says, "Oh, yeah, it can just be us for Christmas, come over." And then, two male escorts pop out of the next room. So, and how he convinced her and other women that this was just a threesome or a foursome, or this was just like a one-time thing they could do to make him happy. But the fact is, it wasn't. He was grooming them and escalating the behavior. And then the third is the entrapment, where they can't get away, whether it's a 14-year-old in a warehouse, like Jacqueline was talking about this morning, and you were talking about the girls under the bridge. Or it may be like a $10,000 a day escort, rarely is, but who has security guards all around her building and can't go anywhere because her pimp is stalking her. It doesn't matter. It takes all forms. But back to the defense, like you were talking about, what do I think about that? And what do I think today? The defense is going straight into the grooming entrapment part of the Romeo pimp syndrome, and saying that because these girls sometimes said yes, sometimes said no, that means that they were willing participants. But if you really know about that syndrome, the women always waffle, not because they don't know their own mind, but because they're so terrified of the abuser. So in some ways, he's like pointing out a case study for sex trafficking, but he's using it as a defense, which I thought was really twisted, to be honest with you.
I don't even know what to say. I just know that I hear these stories several times every week, like what Sean Combs is doing. Okay.
Hmm.
And he just rings to me as a really like a sex trafficker, a pimp.
Hmm.
This is,
Hmm.
and also, and we heard this morning on the show also, um, that with one of the guests, that these women, because they tell it to me, they've given up on life. Like they just think this is what they've got. They got nothing to go to. They have
Hmm.
no money. By
Didn't
now,
know.
maybe they're addicted to alcohol and drugs, very common, right? They
Hmm.
want to,
Hmm.
they don't want the pain. A lot of them tell me, or the pimp trafficker gets them addicted to keep them complacent,
Yes.
and they
That's
really just give up on their life. They tell me that they're like, well, this is it for me. And then and a lot of them, when they open up, they're like, and who's going to want me? Like, this is embarrassing. They even know deep down on some level.
Yeah.
And I've even had Bethany, they've said to me, people working in trafficking. Okay. I'll just leave it at that. Well, these are throwaway people anyway. When I first heard that, Dr. Bethany, that's what made me really work harder as a warrior. That anybody would think another human being,
It's the
there's
throwaway.
somebody's daughter or sister or mother,
Mhm,
and you're
mhm.
supposed to be helping them, and you call them a throwaway.
I mean, I think that's where we really see the othering, right? Which is looking at somebody as if they are other than you. They lack no human value. They have no internal good traits. And this is was really at the heart of all forms of slavery, whether someone's working on a plantation or they're driving you around or they're performing sex acts or they're making food in your house while they're starving. I tend to think of slavery, just take the sex trafficking out of it for a moment, that at the heart of slavery is the extreme anxiety that if you treat another class or race of people as if they have beneficial qualities, they're smart, they're successful, they have all kinds of wonderful things going on, enviable traits, that it turns the oppressor's world upside down because the oppressor wants to think of themselves as always in power, at the center of their own universe, possessing the highest intellect, the most wealth, and the idea that another class or race, maybe they can do it better than you. Maybe they're smarter than you. Maybe they can write a better book. Maybe they have something to say. I think for really insecure people, it turns their whole lives into chaos. It fractures their world. So they try to put their world back together in an evil way by oppressing another group. So sometimes I think that what is at the heart of slavery, the type of slavery that's existed for centuries, is envy of another group and not wanting to see them as good because that causes you to cast doubt on yourself. So that's just at the simplest basic level. And then you go to sex trafficking. Well, at some level, you want to treat a boy or a girl or a young woman as if they're an object,
Yes.
devoid of any internal qualities, not possessing a mind, only something to be used. And that to me is that's similar to me with serial killers cutting a woman's head off. I mean, cutting the intelligence off, cutting the beauty off, cutting the resources off. So we see that this at the center of all slavery, the devaluation and objectification of the other person, holding on to power,
Yes.
and a profound reluctance and inability to see that person as maybe possessing intelligence traits, things that maybe are better than you. And that is such a huge threat to them.
I mean, you said a mouthful. Why? I'm digressing a little bit, but you know what, Dr. Bethany? Why are so many people threatened like that? That somebody might be a little. I'm like, there's room for everybody for everything. Like, that's kind of my
Not
bottom
everybody
line.
thinks that way.
And I
Not.
don't understand, but you know what? If I think about business over the decades, my
Mhm,
own career
mhm.
now, because I'm a lot smarter now than 30,
Hopefully we get
even
smarter,
40
right?
years. Yes, I'm a lot smarter since a year ago. But um, then I'm like, now, Dr. Bethany, oh, I didn't realize what that was. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't get that job, in music because I was like always the serious type, thinking hard work pays off. I was not, batting my eyelashes or things.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I guess I wasn't good enough to get that job, but I knew my work was better.
See,
Like
there you
now I
go,
can put
right
it in
there.
perspective. That is something with society. I was with a group of women last night, all
Mhm.
powerful scientists, surgeon, dress for success. I mean, really women doing, moving, doing good things. And they all were talking. We were sitting around talking, one of my salons, I like to call them.
Nice.
And yes, because I did that going to NYU 1979 is when I
Mm,
started. And we used to do that, Dr. Bethany. It would be all kinds of people in New York, like coming together, all kinds of views. There was no, once in a while you had
yes.
a hothead, whatever, but everybody was friendly and respectful. It was a safe space.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I'm trying to, not trying, I am recreating that. with good women I'm meeting lately that can help each other empower, but they all expressed and I'm saying brilliant, and I mean brilliant, the scientist and all that.
Mhm.
Insecurities. We were talking about why women we're like really always pick at ourselves, and we got into the aging thing,
That's great that you
and one also does all this aesthetic medicine, with the
ah,
collagen, but it's not just like injections. It's the platelets and the this and building up the muscle mass. I had like a million questions. I'm like, well, tell me. She said, it's all this new science. I was like fascinated by this stuff. But every
mhm,
one of them said, it was 16, including me.
mm,
We were talking like, why are we so secure?
mm,
I don't even understand it. We're all doing wonderful things. We're all
mhm.
giving back to society. We're all, what what's your take on that? Because I'm telling you, every woman suffers from it. I think on
We've
some
all
level
been
somewhere.
socialized. We've all been socialized to feel that men are better than us. I have fought that my whole life. I mean, I've had two husbands, one passed from cancer, and then a current one who I went into the relationship believing by virtue of the fact that they were men, that they had a superior grasp of finances, math, automobiles, business. And then about halfway through each marriage, I realized, you know what? I think I know more than this person. I could run a business better. I could, take back my old finances. In fact, I have a team of women. I have an assistant, a medical biller, somebody who does my social media stuff. And there's something about girl power. There's
Yes.
no man standing in the mix pretending to know how to do it better. And I have to say this morning, and this is random, but I had this session with this woman whose husband is very verbally abusive, but this woman she's gorgeous, has a lot of resources. She could do anything she wanted. But she made the comment in the session that she didn't want to make her husband angry because she didn't want to poke the bear. And I thought, how did the man get to be the bear? How is it that if you express your needs, you're poking him? So when you were saying earlier that you see things differently than when you were younger, 20 years ago as a therapist, I'd be like, oh yeah, don't poke the bear. He's going to get mad at you. And now I'm like, he's not a friggin' bear. He's just a guy. And you have a point too, and you can express your thoughts. So that we're kind of talking about all aspects of this, but to go back to the salon, it's a group of women who the intellects and the success of the others provide inspiration, right? Where you all inspire each other, as opposed to sex trafficking, where the goodness of the other inspires envy and the wish to dominate and control. So it's a very sort of different beast in terms of the attachment style.
Wow. I wanted to also, I mean, I have to ask you, like, what's after Sean Combs? I almost said Dirty Diddy, but I made a pact
We're
with
not
myself.
going to do that. We're going to.
No, because this is very serious stuff, and I'm not going to give him
Mhm,
cute nicknames because this is serious stuff
mhm,
now. I really, a light bulb went off over my head today as I was
mhm.
sitting, listening to everything. Where do we go next? I mean, of course, we had the Epstein. Of course, these are high profile cases, as you know, and Harvey Weinstein, and we had some
Mhm.
stuff going on with Kevin Spacey. Now we have Sean Combs, but I'm here to tell you. I mean, I'm not a lawyer or anything. There are so many
Mhm.
more men in powerful positions I've heard about, known about. Women
Mhm.
have come to me over the years. Where do we
Mhm.
go with all this? Because I'm going to say something that's very unpopular. I believe
Mhm.
it's still a man's world. Women are
Yes.
still fighting for equal pay. Women
Yes.
are still fighting for childcare. So when I
Yep.
used to read the Women's Day and McCall's magazines, where they would say like, Vogue, Cosmopolitan, you can have it all. Like, um,
Mhm.
I don't really think you can. Right?
Mhm.
We try to do everything we can do. The man doesn't seem to have to deal with, the men. They don't seem to have to deal with that. I'm thinking back now in
Mhm.
my my genius way now. That's come
Mhm.
to me,
Mhm.
in the last few years, especially the last year. I'm thinking a lot about these things. And, where do we go? Are we going to ever really hold them responsible? Because this case for me, as you're
Mhm.
aware, because you hear me, is more than just this Sean Combs. It's signaling all the pimps and traffickers out there. As you pointed out, so
Mhm.
happy today. These buyers, right? We talk a lot in the work
Mhm.
we do, ending demand. They get a
Now
slap
the
on the wrist.
consumer. The
that it's
endpoint
consumer.
consumer.
It's a consumer. I could rattle off so many studies about the consumer is a white male, basically, who's in a
Mhm.
relationship, wife or girlfriend,
Mhm.
makes decent money,
Mm.
and and like, what are we doing like
Mm.
there? So where are we going to go after this? I hope, because in all of this, we are forgetting about, we have to retrain everybody what actually sex trafficking is, the trauma bonding, the trauma, the
Mhm.
afraid, they're afraid to leave. They don't
Mm.
know where to go. They're just
Mhm.
worn out. They're just resigned to the fact this is their life. Like, people have to know this is the mind. This is what happens. That is sex trafficking. That is sexual servitude.
Yeah.
That is a definition of force, fraud, coercion with all these things. After this, I'm very sitting a little bit on, let's see where this goes, right?
Mhm.
Um, but seriously, I have to, now I really digress. Like, your lawyer singing in court. I mean, my husband's a lawyer. That's against, like, whatever it's called. Like, you don't sing in court and be gleeful. I mean, I guess you
No,
can do what you
no.
want, but I find it, my husband would never do anything like that, or do
Also,
these
they call
interviews
her
on
Lola.
TMZ, that interview on TMZ with the baby oil. And gee, I was like, today when I heard that, oh, for the 10th time, 20th time, oh, if I was Costco, I'd try to sue him. That's like his name brand or something. Where do you think we go with this? But afterwards, because the victims, this is why they don't come forward. They're let people laugh at them, or they call them throwaway people, or they just
Yeah.
don't, they're not held accountable, these powerful men or men at all. So they're not going to come forward. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think human rights are better than they were 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're trending in the right direction, as they say. I do think, from a scientific perspective, chaos always precedes change. So it's when there's political, economic upheaval in a country that there's a possibility for it to re regulate at a higher level. For instance, um, antibiotics were not, penicillin wasn't discovered until there was a pandemic and so many people died. So it was out of that tragedy and that chaos
Right.
that we learned to prolong our lives. Okay, so there was something good. So I'm hoping something good comes out of this. I think most importantly, what you're doing, Lynn, I mean, you are actually
Oh,
talking to
thank you.
victims, you're going to Congress, you're changing legislation, you're raising awareness, you talk plain talk about it. I realized a couple of weeks ago on the show with Nancy Grace, because she's kind of a natural comedian too, I tend to laugh a lot when she asks me questions. And then I realized we're talking today and you brought up, well, why is anybody laugh? There's no joke about this. It feels like we're all in some ways benefiting, even unconsciously, if not consciously, from the pain of the victim. In other words, none of us are exempt from losing perspective and becoming inured when it comes to all of this, don't you think? Then we have
I'm
to be re-reminded.
Well, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, but then, Dr. Bethany, we have to also realize, we're on a show, right?
Yes, that's
And
true.
and and so it's really like two different things, right?
Mhm.
I mean, Nancy says some things sometimes that make you laugh. You know, or we
That's just your role.
no, 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 she does, or so it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay, right? Because that it's the show. It's
Mhm.
showbiz, kind of, right? It's
And if it
okay.
wasn't entertainment, people wouldn't be tuning in and learning more about sex
It's
trafficking. Now
just
they
it's
do.
just the way it goes. You beat me to the I was gonna say, I look at it like, anytime we can talk about a victim, a survivor, sex trafficking,
Mhm.
power versus vulnerability, it's all good, because there's such
They can begin to see themselves, right? So even like maybe a woman who, you're talking about labor trafficking. So maybe a woman who's, being underpaid and works 24 hours a day, like P. Diddy's, assistants did, they can start to think about, oh, this is what they were talking about on TV. Oh, this is trafficking. Oh, this is slavery. With maybe, my hope would be that women and men who are in exploitive relationships
yeah.
that are not as severe can learn from these outliers too. They can say, oh, he love bombed me at the beginning. Oh, he's getting me to think that things that are not normal are normal. Oh, I'm afraid to leave. That trifecta, that three-stage process happens in any exploitive relationship. It's just more pathological and evil in sex trafficking.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to go back like a broken record to any
Okay.
time we talk about any of this, like for the public.
Mm-hmm.
This is because we have to think, Dr. Bethany, even if we help, this is the way we think at the Warriors. We help one person, like we've done our jobs. This is really the way I think, to
Mm-hmm.
wake them up to all this. So I think overall, our 7 weeks so far with Nancy, we've helped people on some level. We've brought it into their lives so that they can think about it. I know somewhere there's got to be a woman, a girl, a man, or that we've
Somebody.
helped somebody,
Yeah.
because that's just what happens. I don't know though. Well, we'll leave it. We'll see what the verdict is. We're
Let's
waiting
see.
for
We'll be
that.
on verdict watch together.
We're on verdict watch. So, Dr. Bethany, I want to know why. I'm always fascinated by, not fascinated, that's not the right word, but somebody like a Sean Combs
Yes.
has such a team around him, right? We
Mm-hmm.
heard about his right hand woman. Oh, we barely heard about her, Christina Coram. I was
Yeah.
always pushing, like, why aren't we hearing more? But I guess she got some kind of immunity and
Yeah.
put out a paragraph last month or so, like, I knew nothing about it. Impossible
Mm.
when you work 10 years with somebody, right?
Impossible.
But also people who drove cars, people who supplied drugs, people who just did shopping for things like, well, I don't even want to say it, baby oil supplies.
Yes.
I understand people do things for money. But Bethany, give us
Mm-hmm.
the mindset of, I think you and me would be running away. We just wouldn't talk about it. Like if we took a
Mm-hmm.
job, with one of these people like this,
Mm-hmm.
we'd want to get out of there. We wouldn't want to stay no matter what the money was. We want to get away from that environment. Why do so many of them just stay and hang on there? Are they that impressed by this horrible
Mm-hmm.
behavior? Is it that dollar sign? Because I'm always thinking, what makes them stay around this?
I think it's different from individual to individual. It's interesting. I had a patient just 2 weeks ago in my Beverly Hills office say, "Oh, I was interviewed for a job with Sean Diddy Combs." And I said, "Well, thank God you didn't take it. You'd be, a co-conspirator at this point." And he looked straight at me. He goes, "I wouldn't stay more than one day." And I believed him. He's that kind of a guy. He would have left. So and you would have left, I would have left. I think one of the factors is that many people grow up being abused. They
Yes.
really do. So when they fall into a new pattern of abuse, it's not as recognizable for them. I've read a paper once about something called institutional sociopathy, and that is that sociopathic traits, the parasitic lifestyle, uh, relating to others on the basis of power rather than affection, a thin veneer of affability that hides a cold, calculated interior, really profound detachment, lack of empathy. That sometimes people who have this corruption of conscience seeks out other individuals who do as well, and one individual finds another and finds another. We saw this with Michael Jackson. I remember covering that case way back in the day, that his security guards did allegedly see him molesting little boys, and they saw a lot and they didn't step in or do anything. So, and we see this in the court system. Let's say if we have uh, a defendant who has committed a crime that is somewhat similar in nature to something that a judge may have done in his or her youth, right? And so they become offender identified. So the corruption in conscience in one causes them to overlook the action of the other. So I think an abuse history, I think institutional sociopathy, and then for these girls, of course, the just coercion, what is it? Fraud, coercion, and what's the third one?
Fraud, force, and coercion, and I've added sexual servitude. I want people to, because
Yes.
I've added that. It's always force, fraud, coercion, sexual
And sexual
servitude.
servitude. But
That's
here's what's
it.
interesting, Lynn. I wanted to ask you about this, and we touched on it once on the show. So most sex traffickers, they are using the victim to procure goods and services, right? So to get money, like selling the girl's body. I keep thinking in this with P. Diddy, what is he getting? I mean, he's obviously he gets to play out his perversions. He gets to have power over people. I wondered, is he making money off of this in some way? I don't know, like bringing all
Okay.
these.
Okay.
What do you think?
You brought it up, Dr. Bethany. And
Mhm.
again, I have no proof. Only I have a
Uh-huh.
lot of people, my sources, my boots on the
Mhm.
ground that tell me things and have for years. I always heard there were minors, children involved at certain points.
Yes, I've
We
heard
never
that
heard
too.
anything about that. And I don't care if you say it's a 15-year-old girl, that is still in the eyes of the law a minor.
A minor.
But we never, so I was always hoping through those videotapes we heard about that were confiscated
Mhm.
during these raids, like maybe there was something on that. That's why the feds really went in for him
Mhm.
because of child sex trafficking. That's
Yes.
one thing. Um, and I, as far as what he gets out of this, I think for him, I would bet Dr. Bethany, he as a child was molested himself and abused
Mhm, mhm.
somewhere in the neighborhood. We I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't have any proof, right? Um, because we do know from all our work we do,
Mm.
most that are sex trafficked have been abused themselves as a child.
Mm.
Like it just keeps repeating itself, right? You
Mhm.
think they would recognize that, but they don't. You've opened up a can of worms because there's something called familial trafficking. It's
Mm.
very prevalent and it grew tremendously during that whole COVID period.
Yes.
And it will be the husband trafficking the sister, the wife, the daughter, the mother traffics.
Mhm.
We work with a
Mm.
lot. And this is what's
Mm.
heartbreaking. Mothers trafficking their daughters, mothers driving them to homes, mothers driving them to strip clubs.
Wow.
We're talking 12, 13, 14-year-old girls. That's all
Terrible.
they grow up around. They don't know any different. Like they don't,
Mhm,
this is what
mhm.
their young minds, they don't, or it's been going on in the family. So they think this is just what I've heard this, it's cultural. I've heard this from law enforcement. It's cultural, just stay away from it. I'm like, but she's
I
10.
don't think it's just cultural. I mean, I
I
think there's
don't either, but here's the bottom line.
factors. Yeah.
It's a lot of during COVID was, oh, and then we had the other problem. I'm really going all over now. We had a lot of landlords leaning on very vulnerable women, like during COVID, like, I need the rent money, or you need to like, and okay, I'll take your daughter instead. I'll take your son instead. This was going on all over New York. I'm talking about.
Terrible.
So we had that going on, right? So like, we're not
Mhm,
talking about that. But getting back to Sean Combs, I really think he was abused as a child.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
think now, I think he had, we don't talk about it. I really think he was a placeholder for a bigger kind of enterprise
I wonder that too.
because he's not doing this on his own. And
No,
I always
no.
wondered in New York, like all of a sudden he came in, oh, I'm 22, 23, and he's owning empires. Again, I go back to the building that they've now knocked to the ground. It's gone, right? It was only built in 1990, a big skyscraper, it's
Mhm.
just gone. Okay. Like I'm sorry, you just don't walk in and create an empire and get bad boy entertainment on the front of a New
You
York City
don't.
skyscraper. Sorry, you don't get
No.
it. It doesn't
But
work
look at
that way.
Jeffrey Epstein, it was the same way. I mean, who was he really? I'm not even sure if he was a certified stockbroker or wealth
He
asset
wasn't a
manager.
certified teacher and he was teaching at the prestigious Dalton School. I keep asking about that. He was teaching math. He never graduated college and he was teaching math. So like I
So
have so many questions.
it's
Why
the
and
same thing. Like, well, how did he get his wealth? A private jet, an island, and the mansion in Florida, and when he was a math teacher. Like, there is something more to
okay, it's
all
called
of this.
blackmail. It's
It's
called
called black.
and
Oh,
so here's what I want to ask you. So and
interesting.
also that house on 71st Street, the biggest single home in New York City, the mansion on
Mhm.
71st Street, that was his home.
Yes.
It was a school at one time.
Hmm.
And he bought that for $1 from Les Wexner, the
Les
owner.
Wexner.
Do you remember that whole thing goes into Victoria's Secret? Remember all those model
Yes.
shows of the Victoria's
Yes.
Angels? And then
Yes.
we would get all these women would come out of that, the Heidi Klums. Oh, I was a Victoria's Angel
Mhm.
model. In my
Mhm.
opinion, that was nothing more than a cover for trafficking.
Mm,
And that's how they
interesting.
bring a lot of these kind of, women from Poland and these other countries and they're Victoria's Secret Angels and they're trafficking.
Mhm.
Trafficking. And we know about the
Mhm.
modeling business. A lot of trafficking goes on in that, right? I think for Sean Combs, he just from a very young age, I actually think he's stupid. I don't agree with he's brilliant. He
Mhm.
had this,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
he
don't
was
either.
handed things to be the stupid, fall guy. I really believe this. To
Mhm.
liquor or this, and he's doing liquor commercials for his own vodka, and he's all these mansions
Yeah.
because he was that placeholder,
Mhm.
that fall
Mhm.
guy for
Mhm.
many more
Well,
in
he
the
could also
entertainment, in
bring
the
in a
music
lot of,
business. Yeah.
but he also brought in so many celebrities too, right? So he drew in groups of people just like Epstein did. I mean, there's another, I think with the Epsteins and the Combs and these kinds of men, Weinstein, one of the definitions of narcissism is a preoccupation with high net worth individuals.
Yes.
So they love to gravitate towards high net
That's
worth
it.
individuals and they
That's
love
it.
to be them. So, who knows what kind of horse trading is going on in that world, really?
Well, the other thing I don't understand, well, let's get something clear that I always
Okay.
think about. Picture. No, that sounded fresh. I didn't mean to sound fresh like that. My mind's going like faster than my
Uh-huh.
mouth can get the words out with you. To me, a picture, standing in a picture with somebody means nothing. Think about it. In my
Mm.
neighborhood, they stand outside of the stage door at Broadway theaters. The actors,
Mhm.
actresses, they
Yeah.
take pictures with strangers. You just pointed out people like to be around money. It makes them
Mhm.
feel important or whatever
Yes.
they're thinking.
Yes, it
So I
does.
don't care who was in a picture with Epstein. Like that doesn't mean you're guilty of anything.
Mm.
I don't
Okay.
care who's in a picture with Diddy. That doesn't make you guilty of anything. They were all flocking to the Hamptons to go to these white parties. I heard about this for years. They went to
Mm.
parties. I don't think they were all in back rooms, back bedrooms. I think
No,
that went on
no.
afterwards. We heard a little about, it was later at
Yeah.
night and a
Late at night.
select group.
Mhm.
But people want to be around money. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the thing. I do think, though, this guy did something. We'll never hear about it.
Mm.
Why now? Like,
Mhm.
why did they want to clip his wings right now? Right? Why did they want to stop him right now? What was so horrible that would, it would be better to be swept under the rug? Why now?
Mhm.
I have a lot of questions that I don't think Dr. Bethany will ever get answers to.
I
He
don't
did
think so
something
either.
somewhere, or something came along where, like, we're just done with him. And so we're
Yes.
going to just let him go. But
Mhm.
we're not getting the full story, in
No.
my opinion. We don't know who else is complicit. We heard from a
Mhm.
handful of people, right?
Mm.
So many more. His
Mm.
side rests the case after 23 minutes. I never heard about not one person to just say, this
I
is a great guy. He paid my grocery bills, or he, some grandma or something. Like, we heard nothing.
Nobody.
And they're acting like they
Nobody.
won already. There is a part of me that says that's the Sean Combs playbook. You act confident. You act like
Uh-huh.
you're in charge. You're in control to
Yeah.
maybe make these jurors. Because I don't care what anybody says. These jurors know or hear something, or they're looking on something. I don't care. You're not supposed to look on the internet. Or people
Oh, they're
do.
gonna look. Of course
People
they
do.
do.
That's just the reality.
Yes.
Uh, so I don't think we ever got this full story, but I do always
Mhm.
say, why now? Why did they stop him now? What happened? And that goes back to, I
Mhm.
started with blackmail. I don't understand
Mhm.
people in power allowing themselves to get videotaped, right? In these
Yes.
situations that could then be used against you. Now, again, I have no proof of this. I'm
Mm.
just saying, going back to Epstein, I really think that was more of a blackmailing on a very global level.
Yes,
You
global
can
blackmailing.
you can command getting a house for $1, a mansion in Manhattan. You
No,
can world leaders, get a private jet from them just to
no.
shut you up. And I think, as far as
Well, speaking
Sean,
of which, we know somebody else, right, in the Oval Office who was pretty preoccupied with beauty pageants, right, and the modeling agency.
well, but that was
All
another
that.
thing. Look, bursting into dressing rooms when young
Mhm.
women were changing in bathing suits. I mean, what is this? And everybody overlooked it. And
Yeah.
young women and girls, like, we're conditioned. I'm convinced, Dr. Bethany, that,
Mm.
like, we just kind of accept it. That's why I'm trying to
Yeah.
empower young girls now and young women. Like, no, like, we have to
Mhm.
change this track of all this. Like,
Mm.
and even working on Broadway years ago, in the producer end of it,
Mm.
actresses later would tell me things I didn't know what was going on the show I was working on at the time, where it would be a male producer, and they
Oh, God.
didn't tell. And I would say, why didn't you tell me? Because I was around all the time. They'd say, I wanted my job. he's, lead producer, or my first time
Mhm.
on Broadway, I didn't want to ruin it. I'll get blackballed in the. So I think we're
Mhm.
conditioned from the time we're girls. Like we have to give in to these behaviors. We have to accept it. This is, what we get. I want to break
Mhm.
that. I know there's been talk over 50 years now of all this women's empowerment, but I ask you, Dr. Bethany, in New York, I work with a lot of groups, and these women call themselves feminists. Feminists,
Mhm.
feminists. I didn't see any of these women. I won't give any names, and there's lots of them.
Mhm.
Bro, we women and girls, we have to protect them from sex trafficking. I didn't see anybody going down to the courthouse saying, "Come on, let's go with signs and let's,
Mhm.
for nothing else, make a PR move here to show
Yeah.
like we're standing with these victims, right? Because these are victims of Sean Combs." I don't see anything. Where are the voices?
That's a good point. There haven't been any.
Where where are the voices? Now I do know there were a few. I brought it up today. I
Mhm.
threw it in there. That there were a couple of women that were going to do it, and two of them were threatened.
You're
And these are
kidding me.
no, and I sort of threw it in today quickly,
Who
sort of that
threatened
I
them?
Diddy disciples. They're still
Uh,
running around. They're still running around New York. You know,
uh-huh. So
I
they
mean,
didn't
we
feel safe there.
not if you have children or grandchildren, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's right. You're not going to do it, but they were trying to do a
Mm.
little community, get some women together, and then they're like, forget it. We have our lives are on the line. Like we're not going to do anything. So
Mm.
we had, how sad is that? We have a
That's
lot of protesting in this city, but we can't go and hold some signs like
right.
peacefully and say down with Diddy or something
Right.
like that. So that's interesting. But I just feel like, I don't know if it's because we're all talking more, we have the internet, I feel like things are getting worse in
Mm. Well, you
society.
also see a lot of it too, but there's more. I think you're the one who mentioned it. There's more access. There's more ways to do it now. There's the internet,
Internet.
like you said, the phones going. We've covered cases where predators have gone inside kids' gaming consoles, right? Where they start the parents think they're protecting their kids from sex predators, but then it's another gamer in another town or something that grooms them through these video games.
Well,
The group games that they play.
yeah. And the other thing very disturbing, we do a lot of with digital safety and with tech companies, and a lot now with AI as our full push. I was actually talking to a brilliant young man today.
Mm,
He works on legislation. It's all AI that we're working on, right?
okay.
And but there's something that came out a few years ago, an app called Saturn. And
Hmm.
all the schools, this was about 3 years ago, all the schools were using it. It's a calendar. So
Okay.
the different school groups, the different
Yeah.
classes, you
Yeah.
can put all your schedules or your notes, and the
Mhm.
teachers use it, the administration uses it, the students use it. And it's over half the public schools in the United States use this because it's a calendar,
Mhm.
Saturn. So
Saturn.
we were calling them out 3 years ago because it was open access. So strangers were able to
Oh.
basically join in and see, oh, okay, a little Johnny's going to soccer practice. Oh, little Susie's going to after school drama class. So we
Mm.
were sounding the alarm like no, like this access
Advertising it.
predators,
Yeah, they're
and
advertising it to
and
predators.
actually knowing where they are, because we still have cases where somebody will say, okay, I want a blonde 6-year-old girl. They go pick them up. Like you don't hear that in the media because everything's online,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, we know right now boys 8 to 12 are bringing in 3 times the amount of money for trafficking than girls, and the demo's growing for boys. Like we're not talking about that, right?
That's
That's the other I'm going back to Diddy now. I also always heard about boys
yes.
with the minors.
Yes.
Okay. And we have heard nothing about that. But going back to this, so all of a sudden we thought we had some guardrails on Saturn. Now it's popped
Mm.
up again because the schools are fully using it. And Meta has bought it, which is Facebook and Instagram. They're rolling it into their
Wow.
products, which we have
Wow.
had no breakthroughs. We have Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress apologizing to parents whose children have been harmed,
Mm.
promising more safety, more guardrails, more staff. They lie to our faces, they lie to the American public. Now we've
Mhm.
got this. So what do we have to do? It's open for predators. But
Mhm.
here's the kicker. why we're fighting back right now, because different schools said to parents of minors, well, if you're a coach on my son's team, I want to be able to see what you're communicating about. And they weren't allowing parents to add on to this Saturn app. And we're like, that doesn't
Oh,
even make sense. You could have an 8-year-old daughter, but they didn't want any
wow.
parent. So what is
That's
this
very
like,
odd.
what is this
What is
mindset?
this?
Like, so what is that mind? Like, everything can be hacked. It just can. Everything is hackable.
Mhm.
So these predators know how to hack any kind of app, game,
Mhm.
site. They're always 10 steps ahead of all of us, and the law lags behind
Mhm.
technology. But we had lawsuits where the parents are suing. You can't, then my child can't be on that app, that
Mhm.
calendar, because I have to have access as well. That's common sense.
Mhm. And
Why
I
is
think
there
about the adults who set this in motion, where the parents can't get in to see the communications or read them. I begin to wonder, are they people who are kind of romancing the idea of being predators, or they're setting it up, right, in concert with other people? Sometimes I think from like a psychological perspective, it's not always even conscious 100%. I mean, I've seen in my practice people who they teach, they direct the school choir, and there's this preoccupation with children, but they might not even identify themselves as pedophiles. It's rare that I see that, granted, but they keep like pushing the envelope and getting closer and closer and
yes,
closer. So I think in terms of this app, I wonder, like, who designed it, who set it up that way. Like, were there a group of engineers, tech engineers, who came together, and what were their motivations? I mean, it's such a complex group psychology.
complex, but usually their motivation is money. They know they can make a lot of money. That's what they all say. Like, they won't go on
Oh,
the
okay.
record. They're like, we can just make a lot of money. We don't care about the kids. We don't care about parents. We don't care about like
Mhm.
morality. We don't care. We're just making lots of money and nobody's stopping us. So
Mhm.
we're just going to keep
Mhm.
pushing and pushing it. So it's
Mhm.
that. But that's why we have our jobs of educating everybody about, like, these things are going on, at least so you can talk to your child, or you can be part of it, remove them from it. Or there's so many little things like that, like the public never really hears about, that we try so hard at the Warriors to educate about, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
it seems very upside down, everything. And again, I'm going to go back to all of this sexual exploitation, the Sean Combs case, the Harvey Weinstein. I'm sorry, there should be a lot more men in prison right now, in the jails. Not, I mean, I can't ever say I feel bad for Harvey Weinstein, because I don't.
No.
But I really wonder why he's like the only one being dragged through, and there's so many more, right, walking around.
Mhm. Of
Um, what
course.
what do you think, if this outcome? I don't even want to say it. What do you think about victims and survivors in general of all forms of sexual exploitation when they hear about this verdict? Let's just pretend, I don't even know if I should say this. Let's pretend he gets like 3 years or something, which I call a
Yeah.
slap on the wrist, right?
Yes.
And then I question, well, who else was complicit with him? He didn't do this on his own. Why aren't they getting time as
Why
well,
aren't they
right?
going?
Because those sexy clothes we kept seeing, and that lingerie and bottles of baby oil really mean nothing when you think about it. You can't,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
they're just perverted. Like, right? That's
Yeah.
that we can't. What do you think the mind of a victim is going to think if something just is not going the way I'm praying it's going to go, which is holding him accountable?
Well, when you think of what happens with victims, they have post-traumatic stress,
Yeah.
isolation, withdrawal, lack of faith in relationships. They sometimes become asexual. They just don't trust, right? And they're prone to psychiatric issues, depression, anxiety. But the thing I flashed on today, as we all went on verdict watch, was how many women who are actively being sex trafficked or exploited, looking to this verdict to galvanize them so that they feel that they can get out. And
Yes.
then when P. Diddy, if he's exonerated or acquitted, their sex trafficker or exploitive partner being even more taunting them, or being more empowered or emboldened. I know
Yes.
that's a very niche.
No, no, but you brought that up today, earlier today, and I thought, how,
Yeah.
that is exactly it. That's why I love you,
Mhm.
Dr. Bethany, because these
Mhm.
things are somewhere buried in my mind, but you're able to because there's so much in that mind, but you're able to
You will talk
verbalize.
all day. Yeah.
No, but it's
Yeah.
hard when you have a quick hit, like to get it all in what I'm
Yes, it
thinking,
is.
and then I'm always like, oh, Dr. Bethany is so right. She gets that so right all the time.
Mhm.
Um, they've contacted me. It went on. I know some of the women with Epstein. Okay. I've worked with
Mhm.
them. I'm involved. Some of them are in lawsuits right now still, right? There were a couple of
Mhm.
class
Mhm.
actions. And here's what
Yes.
I want to say about that. And also with the Sean Combs, um, and I believe them. A lot of them said to me, this is not about money. This is about accountability. I want to see somebody in a power position be taken down.
That's
I
right.
don't even want a penny. If I don't get anything from a class action, this is what they said to me. And if it's all different ones that don't know each other, basically, I'm
Mhm.
believing them, right? If the story
I
is kind of
believe
the
them
same.
too.
And so I believe them as I've worked with different women. And so I really think this case means so much. And almost on a daily basis, somebody reaches out and says, what do you know? What can you share? What do you think's going to happen? And I don't ever want to be, what do you think's going to happen? I'll
Mm.
ask you that, but I don't ever want with somebody who's been exploited, like we have to follow it through the rule of law. I have confidence in the jury. I really have confidence in the jury that Cassie video, no matter
Mhm.
what they're going no matter what is before them, they're going to keep thinking this guy was kicking her when she was down. She looked dead. She wasn't moving. He kept kicking her, dragging her.
In
She,
her
they,
vital organs. You
yeah.
said something about these women don't want money. And then I kind of toyed with that idea in my mind because I'm writing a book about financial fraud, love
Mm,
fraud. And the research shows when a woman or a man, but usually women, are a victim of financial fraud, they become obsessed with getting the money back. So they double down because they realize all the losses. And the more they have a consciousness of the losses, the more they want to recoup. And usually they can't. So I was thinking, so what if they did want money back? What if they did want to recoup their losses? That doesn't mean that's the only motivation, right? That's not primary, but they do deserve compensation. Um,
But
but I
what do
don't.
we hear, Dr. Bethany? What do we hear a lot in these cases? I don't mean to interrupt you. Like,
All
oh,
she was
she's
in it
doing
for
it
the money, for the
in it for
money.
the money, or in the court we hear, oh, well, she took a Cassie took a settlement. Uh, so
So what?
so I'm glad if you took some money after that kind of abuse or something. But what do we hear in the justice system? You
It's
took the money.
true.
This is what the lawyers say all the
Mhm,
time. It's the victim blaming, not really understanding this
mhm.
sex trafficking, the force for coercion. So
And
I'm
it's the grooming too, because I think I told you, and I mentioned on Nancy's show once that I had a group of call girls that would come into my office in Beverly Hills, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And they, on the surface, they looked like quite sophisticated, like getting paid 10,000 a pop for this, that, or the other. But as I really peeked beneath the surface, especially with this one woman was dating one of the richest men in the world. I can't remember who it was. The name didn't impress me, but she would have to go meet him whenever he wanted. He would give her $5,000 in cash, which she'd have to live on until she saw him again because he wouldn't allow her to get a job. And he was a gazillionaire, as you know. And it wasn't until she was in a doctor's office and she looked at the front of a glossy magazine and there was a story about him that he had just built a new wing of a hospital and dedicated it to his wife, put it in his wife's name. And she realized, oh, I'm never going to be Mrs. So and so. But the other thing, she'd never done the math. I got a calculator out and I said, now how many times have you been with him this year? Okay, you got $5,000 each time. Now, what could you have made if you had gotten a job? And she thought she was getting so much and she was getting nothing because she wasn't allowed to work. So I know that's just one story, but I'm sure you have so many more. But how one's sense of reality gets co-opted by a
yes, that's just
perpetrator.
it.
It's just like an upside down world. Like she didn't even get a calculator out um, to see
No, their
what.
brain, it's that trauma bonding and that brainwashing, and not for nothing, but for somebody like that, $5,000, that's like nothing. Yeah, we talked about Sean Combs trying to negotiate, which I call them prostituted people. I don't use sex worker.
Yeah,
I just don't, because
Mhm.
our studies show up to 97% are forced into it. So I say
Mhm.
prostituted or forced into the sex trade. But the media, everybody uses sex worker for shorthand. How he's trying to
Mhm.
negotiate and he's not paying $600. How cheap? On like it just
Because the
goes.
guy couldn't perform. Well, what, like I said on air earlier this week, keep an erection for 3 days. I mean,
Well, I don't even understand that.
yeah, what is he even
I don't
talking
care what
about?
drugs you're taking. I don't even understand that one. But also,
No.
all laughing aside, what we don't talk a lot about is that healthcare, of all these women and girls repeatedly, like in the sex trafficking,
Mhm.
what their bodies go through and the diseases and infections. And I know it's disgusting, everybody, but it's the reality. And
Yeah.
all of that is an additional. Now think about it. At some
And
point,
and even like HIV, life-threatening.
it's going, we have a very big uptick in that, with young people,
I
HIV. And who's
know.
talking about that? Not
I
many.
know.
We're not,
I
we're also building here in New York. It's going to be the biggest. I just found out yesterday in my
Mhm.
digging around. The biggest, it has some catchy name, sexual health center,
Hmm.
24 hours a day. You can go
Hmm.
in and self swab for diseases.
Hmm.
You will be given free everything. If you're a sex
Oh,
worker, they want to cater to the sex trade. That
okay.
is actually what they're putting out there, not like people who may need medical help, the sex
Mhm.
trade.
Hmm.
Now, think
Hmm.
about that. Again, we're being normalized, habituated into the sex trade.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
unfortunately, not to get too political, we have a mayor elect now, very young, and is 33. His wife is 27. And all of our work in New York State to, hold those who buy sex accountable, right,
Mhm.
will
Mhm.
be washed. And it's a tough fight because we're not there yet. We've been fighting a long time. He believes, and his wife, they believe, even for kids, when you grow up, you can be a sex worker because that
Mhm.
is a healthy. You own your body, it's your choice. And if you want to do that, that's okay for you. We're going to give you medical, whatever. We're going to give you your rights, but be a sex worker.
They are
But what
quite uninformed, aren't they?
they do not understand, people do not
I don't
understand this
understand
one.
it.
When we hear
Yeah.
legalizing prostitution, okay, the oldest oppression, as I like to say, not profession, uh,
Mhm.
that it's legalizing the pimps and the traffickers and the brothels. That's what it's doing.
Yes, it
It,
is.
it's not helping any victims. We know from studies in different countries that have legalized it, and they're given health care and benefits, and the women are in no better shape. They're not really controlling anything. There's still
No.
somebody behind the scenes controlling them. It didn't work out in
Yes.
Germany, Amsterdam, all these places. So I feel like we just live in this one big sexual exploitation environment. But
Mhm.
my concern, Dr. Bethany, is our youth, like growing up
Mhm.
in this. How are we going to steer them other than raising awareness, talking to them, educating them away from this when a lovely young woman, part of our salon, she goes to Colombia. She's my
Mhm.
boots on the ground to feed me, like, what's going on? Colombia, a lot of protesting
Uh-huh.
lately. Um, she said so many of her fellow, students, friends,
Mm.
they're selling their feet, pictures of their feet, because they're getting $300 a pop. And she's like, but it's not faces. And then
Mm.
I'm like, I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, it beats working at CVS, but I'm not supporting this or endorsing it. I'm just saying to you,
I'm sorry.
maybe Dr. Bethany, we should be selling pictures of our feet.
That's what a patient of mine. Oh my God, I had this
They're
patient
selling their
earlier
feet.
today who's a very highly regarded producer. And it kind of has a hard life in many ways. And he goes, I could just sell my feet.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. This is like the new craze, selling
It's like
feet.
my son, I just to sell my feet.
How many?
I'm
No,
like,
but
you don't have to get on
seriously,
a stripper pole anymore. Just sell your feet.
no,
Yeah.
just selling. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, oh no, so many of the girls are just selling the feet. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, it's $300. They do a few a day. I'm like, a few a day. Think of the money they're taking it. But think about
Wow.
who's buying those pictures. What are
Who's
they
buying
doing
it?
with them? What do you do with feet?
And
Feet are kind of
also,
ugly
is
if you
that an
think about it.
entree into a group of young women where you can begin to love bomb them and that Romeo pimp syndrome
But
we were talking
but
about,
that's just it.
you
That's
know?
just it. We know now that it starts and it's, okay, your feet, like move it up a little bit. Now move it up to
Mhm.
your, private areas, as we say.
Yeah.
Give us some final words because I could talk to you all day. We're sitting on verdict watch. We'll be talking about it again tomorrow.
Mhm,
We're
mhm.
going to hope we have a jury that comes to a quick conclusion. I'm hoping. I don't know if you're hoping, just so
A
we can be done
quick
with this once and for all. Because when it starts to drag out, I start to think, who's that one in there that's protesting or bringing something up, holding this hearing up? What do you think
well,
about all this? We've talked about a lot of different things, and we kind of just jump around a lot. But in all seriousness, society, our youth.
I think all the glitz and the glamour and the fact that he is so fancy in his lifestyle and in combination with capitalism and our culture makes it a story people really care about. But I keep wondering if there was like a 14-year-old from Albania on the stand, or any other like lower echelon socioeconomic group that was on the stand, would people pay attention as much? Like, are people going to be able to translate what they're hearing
Mhm.
into sex trafficking as it occurs in a more pervasive, pernicious manner? I don't know. What do you think about that? I'm just hoping people can.
Well, I'm going to go back to there's going to be a few that gain knowledge or recognize
Yeah.
indicators like I'm sex trafficked. It could even be a husband or a boyfriend, like, oh, this coercive
Mhm.
control or holding out on the money or we got to pay the
Yeah.
rent, So somebody
Or
somewhere, we're
a girlfriend that says, "Well, my husband wants me to go to swingers parties, so I'll just get high on ecstasy, so I don't have
that's
to really
right.
feel jealous."
I forgot about that one. There's a
Mhm.
lot of that going
With that.
on with a lot of
Mhm.
married couples I'm hearing. And so to
Yes,
me, this
where
is
one wants
also
it and the other one doesn't, and so they will excessively use drugs or alcohol or something to numb themselves out. That's a really common one that I hear about.
and not to be, like the police watchdog here. I've noticed, Dr. Bethany, I noticed it since COVID, a true uptick in women here in New York really drinking a lot.
Yes.
And I don't even know how to explain this one, but I just know there's an uptick women drinking during the day. Not We're not talking socially, you go out for some wine, after work
No,
or
no.
I'm talking, 10 in the morning and I'm like a little bit shocked that I'm uncovering
Yeah.
a lot of this or people I never thought told me, "Oh no, I this is how I cope with everything. I've got to do this. I can't cope with the kids. I can't cope with my job. I can't cope with my husband." A lot of drinking going on, very
I
concerning.
see drinking with women and I see cannabis use with men.
Oh,
That's sort of what I see. I think it maybe is another example of how we can get acculturated to almost anything. We can rationalize our way into, a martini at 10 in the morning is okay, or okay, I'll just get high once to go to the swingers party with my boyfriend, or I started using cannabis at 14. It's probably not affecting my brain. And the stories we tell ourselves about what's okay are so shocking. And we have to be able to stand back a little bit and say, is this okay? Is this really,
yes.
really okay? And with the Sean Diddy Combs trial, we're seeing part of the worst of what happens with
Right.
these pathological patterns. So hopefully it brings a consciousness into everyday life.
No, it is. We're going to leave everybody with hope because
Yes.
we're talking about it. That's raising awareness. Sounds very simple, but that's the number one thing, raising awareness, knowing that this is going on, right?
Yes.
Education about that. And then also resources. We know that, I'll put everything in the body of the video. I mean, people can reach out to you. I'll put your
Mhm.
contact information.
Right.
Always the warriors. I always have
Mhm.
people, you need some direction or a resource, reach out to me. We want people to understand there are also people that care.
Yes.
There, yeah, I mean, we
And
have
there are
Dr. Bethany.
resources.
Dr. Bethany cares, the warriors, we care. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of hope out there because there are a lot of people that are waking up to a lot of things and talking about it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I think there is a lot of hope. I'm going to go in that direction and I'm going to be very hopeful for this jury. But at the same time,
Mhm.
I want everybody to remember there are a lot of victims. We have to always empower them and support
Yes,
survivors.
that's
And
right.
we have to remember a lot of people don't talk about it, but we know a lot of people are suffering. And On that note, Dr. Bethany,
On
finish us
that
up. Anything you want to
note,
say? Because again, I could talk to you for hours, and I always do want to talk to you. We
this
should
is a
have
little
them on.
random, but I flashed on my own mother, who's gone now, who started orphanages all over the world. She
Oh, I
started
love it.
first in India and then Romania. There
Oh,
is Northern Africa. There's 7 or 8 now. But the most common child that gets brought into the orphanage is one who is just sent out in the streets as a sex worker and then just gets picked up by a predator. These are 5, 6-year-old little kids. And the police will find, especially in India, these kids wandering the streets, and then we'll bring them to the orphanage. But so you can see it's, I don't know, it's just everywhere. Okay, we were going to end on hope, and then
wait a
I
minute. Stop that. Stop. No, but you brought up a good point. Because you know what? A lot of the buyers of these children are American men that fly over to these other countries
That's right.
and do this. And the other thing, I don't want to bring it up, we're a family program. What happens to these children? A lot of them end up, expired. I'll put it that way because we have algorithms, believe it or
Yes.
not. We can, what a sad thing. And I'm
What
told,
a sad
well,
thing.
listen, there are 4 or 5 kids in the family. It's expected. This is how they grow up. And families are handing over their children. Think about this.
Yes, they are.
So this, I know now where you get all of your from your mother, all this compassion and all, because you're very calm all the time.
My
Sometimes,
father worked with the homeless for many years. He got a
oh,
doctorate in homeless ministries. So my mother
really?
was orphans and my dad was homeless, and then we spent a lot of time in Africa. They did building infrastructure. So I think I have a global view. One of my best friends lives in Great Britain, and she is a counselor, and she counsels women who have been kidnapped and sex trafficked, forced to have children to be
Yes.
sold, babies to be sold to pedophiles.
We didn't even talk about that. It's called forced. It's a form of human trafficking. It's forced surrogacy.
Forced surrogacy,
Yeah,
yes.
it's a form of human trafficking that nobody talks about, and I know a lot about this. In America, for couples wanting a baby, guess the number one country they wanted the baby from?
What?
Ukraine, because they
Oh,
liked the way people looked in Ukraine. A lot of the women were
mhm.
bare skin,
Oh,
blondish, some of
yeah.
them. And so a lot of celebrities, even ones I know of that said they were pregnant with a fake stomach, or actually got their
Mhm.
baby in Ukraine. And so
Wow.
that is, and we also know the cartels right now. You brought up, oh, see
Mhm.
how you open this can of worms? The cartels have a whole organized crime operation going on of
Mm.
doing this. This is part of their business. Young women, girls even, kidnapping them, trafficking them, forcing them. These baby farms we have going on.
So, what I would love to talk about next time, if you invite me to be on the show, I hope
What
you
do you mean
will.
if? Yeah, we
I
have to
would
stick to
love
one
to hear
subject. There's so much to talk about.
Well, I would love to hear more of these stories like the baby farms, the forced surrogacy, and then get to the bottom of the human psychology of it. Like what it's all the same offending pattern everywhere, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's all variations of it. And I would also love to talk about, you were talking about how often victimizers were victimized themselves, but what type of sexual victimization leads somebody to become an abuser? Because many, like women especially who are sexually abused, become asexual. They don't want anything to do with sex.
Yes.
But the subpopulation that I think does tend to become abusers is those who were excessively stimulated during childhood, like their parents were provocative or walked around naked or showed them pornography or masturbated them or something, where they were in a state of arousal all the time. And then as predators, they seek this like constant arousal. So that's I deviate. That's a whole nother topic, but we
Oh
we,
my
we have a
goodness.
few more to go on now.
That's a whole nother program. You just gave me
That's
three
my
ideas,
program.
3 programs I have written down here. Because I think that's what happened to Sean Combs.
I do too. Did you
I
see that
I
picture of him with his mother and how seductive she was with him? They're
I
like,
saw them kissing on the lips. I saw
yes,
them in some video talking about he would go to the strip clubs with her.
yep.
Who goes to strip clubs with your mother?
And what
That's
mother goes to strip clubs? Yeah, the whole
and
thing.
yeah, what mother goes to strip
Excessively
clubs?
stimulated.
And then
Mhm.
she knew how to like do stripper moves. I don't know if you ever saw, they made like a video and she could put her hands down her legs. Again, we're a family program, but like who Who does those things?
Wow.
Well,
I did
he
not know
grew up in
that.
this world. I think that's exactly what you explained. He's always been in
Mhm,
this kind of hypersexual. This would be my take. This is your expertise.
mhm,
What's the next thing to get me aroused? Like, what's the next thing? And it's controlling vulnerable people, but
mhm.
watching them, directing it,
And upping
and
the ante on cruelty.
and then they're doing it for you, right? The
Yes.
women, and he's paying the men, whatever. And then like,
Mhm.
how can we keep doing this to keep him, stimulated in his mind, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I mean, and all the drugs he's taken, and this is a mess. I
It's a
mean,
mess.
this
I'm
is just.
surprised he's alive, to be honest with
But I was going
you.
to say to you, I'm surprised. Listen, don't get me started. Somewhere during these parties, people may have expired. You can't with drugs
Of
and alcohol and this.
course, of course,
Where were
of
the
course.
doctors? There were doctors on call giving IV drips and things. Like where were the? We never heard about these people, and we did. You just reminded me of something. I just thought of. Do you remember that Tony Busby who had the like 888
Oh, yes.
number? Remember that
Yes.
whole thing? Like
Yeah, yeah.
call and thousands of people were
Yeah,
like
yeah.
crashing. There was something, I don't know if you remember back, it was like two minors or something. There were cases that just disappeared, that they said they were minors at the time, adults now, and then the cases just
Mm,
gone. I can find nothing on them. And they were
interesting.
two very loud voices just for a little bit, and then the cases disappeared. And that makes
I
me
rem
very suspicious about minors,
mm,
kids. What's really going on? Was this some
yeah.
sort of sex trafficking on the side of minors? We don't know, of being passed
Well,
around. I
let's
mean, we could
write
sit here
that
all
down as
day.
another topic.
That show 4,
Okay,
but
show 4.
I would love that. I would love to talk about this
Okay.
surrogacy because it's a very big thing that really nobody's talking about. And I know the cartels, it's really a big part of their business. They're operating
Mhm.
in all 50 states, the cartels.
Mm,
They're organized crime. Why aren't we talking well, how are we doing that? Why are they having baby
yeah,
farms in the United States?
yeah.
What's going on? They're also right over the border in Mexico with baby farms.
Mhm.
So why we got to make people aware? How
Yes.
about I post pictures of kids missing every day? Where are all these kids? I keep asking. Thousands of
Mhm,
kids.
mhm.
Where are they?
It's true.
Right? Do the math. Where are the 800,000 they claim, 500,000? We heard in excess of 1 million that came over the border.
I know, I was just thinking about that. Where did they go?
Where are they? A lot are in labor trafficking. I would venture
I
more
was
than
gonna say labor trafficking, working in factories.
labor more than sex.
Yeah.
Labor, because we like cheap labor in this country, Democrats and
Yes, we
Republicans.
do. Yeah, so they probably picked up along the border
And
and
they just want to make money, and they don't know, because they grew up in a country where you start to work the minute you can walk. They
that's
don't
right.
know. And law
That's
enforcement has actually said to me many times they're better off in that environment
mm,
than they'll be out on the streets, or they'll be back in their country. Let them be.
mm.
So look at this whole mindset. That's another program. We're going to talk about that.
Okay,
So
that's
Dr.
program
Bethany
5.
Marshall, we got
All
a lot of
right,
programs
nice
we got to
to
do.
be here.
Oh,
Thank you.
drbethanymarshall.com is the website, everybody. Again, I'll have all of Dr. Bethany's information in the body of the video. And you know what? I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Dr.
Thank
Bethany. And
you, Lynn.
also,
This was amazing.
the voice of reason. And you make me think, because you bring something up and then my mind goes wandering.
Well, you make
And
me think too, so it's a fun conversation.
it is actually fun, which we're
Mm,
talking about all these horrible things, but it's actually fun with you because it's enlightening. And actually, you also
enlightening to
make me
learn.
calm. I think I've said that to you
Fun
before.
to learn.
But I have an idea when I meet you tomorrow.
Okay.
We should drink martinis. Dr. Bethany, you're just a dream, and thank you
Oh,
for your
nice.
dedication and devotion, and keeping everything light, because we're in such an
Thank
overwhelming
you.
environment. I know so many are learning from you, so I want to thank you. And we have about 1,800 shows lined up, so get your calendar
I
out.
know, get the
I will be
calendar out, exactly.
harassing you. Are you available? Are you available? But truly, from the bottom of my
Yeah,
heart, you really
I'd
are a
love to do
warrior.
this.
No, thank you for
Thank
everything you
you.
do, and let us speak again soon, which will be tomorrow
Sounds
morning.
good. It'll be tomorrow morning, bright and
Thanks,
early.
Dr.
Okay,
Bethany. Take good
thank
care.
you.
Take good
Bye.
care. Bye bye.